Justin Weber, Amps and Sound, Chief Schmuck. Audio show. We are partnering again with one of our close collaborators, Acora Acoustics, and we're going to be there with Acora showing their SRBs, which are their bookshelves, in their beautiful white finish. So we're really excited by that. They're going to have their white stands as well, and so our amps are going to be on their stands. So we did a matte black finish of our amps to contrast with their beautiful white quartz finish for the stands. So it's a nice duality between the two. As well as we're going to have a streaming done through a Roon server into an Aurelic Altair G2 DAC. Amps and Sounds Preamp will be doing preamp duties into the Casablancas, which are 60-watt monoblocks. And vinyl will be present with VPI Classic Signature and an Ortofon 2M Bronze. So our preamp is a purist idea of what a preamp needs to be without being more than it should be. We wanted a preamp that was going to be repairable in 40 years, so everything's discrete. All components are on their own dedicated PCBs. It is a fully insulated chassis. It is a little tank, so it's about 10 inches, 10 by 10 by 3, and weighs about 14 pounds. And it's very chunky. It's 3 inputs, so you have a moving magnet with adjustable loading, so you can actually use step-up transformers if you wish, and more than enough gain that you can actually use most moderate output moving magnet cartridges and moving iron cartridges if you wanted to. And then you have 2 line level sources so that you can have either a tape deck or a DAC. You know, we always assume that people want two sources plus vinyl. And then you have an Alps Blue Velvet going in, then you have 2 outputs. Because we always assume people always want to have two output choices, 2 amp choices. And it's a gain of 2. So it's not a lot of gain, but it is in fact more than enough gain for any tube amp. So what we've done is we've kept the gain low enough that you actually still are getting a voltage and a current gain factor while still keeping the distortion and the noise very low. So low noise, but still getting the amplification, voltage, and current-wise that a tube amp wants to see. So it's going to give you that oomph that you want from an amp, really wake it up. Any of our amps are going to sound much better with a preamp in front of it. So that's the whole point. It's always about how sophisticated you want your system or how simple you want your system to be. So if somebody says, hey, I have a streaming DAC that has a really good volume control and I'm done, then maybe you don't even want a volume control from us and you want your DAC to do everything. That's a great choice. And some people will say, I want to be able to attenuate a few things if I want, or I don't know quite what I want and I want a volume control in front of me and I want to future-proof things. So that's what the 99% answer is. And so that's why we have volume control built in for most people to choose from. But for the 2-channel listeners and for the personal audio listeners that are really stepping up to the next level, the reference level, the statement level pieces, the volume control being removed is the right answer because it gives the greatest degree of flexibility and the greatest degree of control. Because really you still want gain, but you don't want noise. You want modularity, but you want the ability to control where that's coming from. And so you want to be able to choose your amplification, but choose where you're getting your gain from. Your DAC should be rendering digital. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's providing a gain function. Most DACs actually provide a unity gain, which means that they don't increase voltage or current at all. Whereas most tube amps want to see a voltage increase. Whereas a buffer is only going to increase current, but not voltage, which doesn't help a tube amp. It might help a solid state amp. Preamps that do voltage and current help tube amps always. preamps that do voltage and current help. Solid state amps also. Any single-ended amp will always sound better with a pre in front of it. And so we're giving people those choices by including our pre. And our pre is priced to be a very accessible option without being a luxury purchase. It is not an expensive purchase when looked at the totality of one's audio choices. So the Casablanca is actually a return and a revisit for us. So for the past 12 years, 15 years, we've been developing our personal audio line and only quietly been developing our 2-channel. Only in the last 4 or 5 years has our 2-channel really become revisited, and that's been at the flagship level. We've always done our best work at the flagship level, both in workmanship, transformers, casework. What the Casablanca is meant to do is to give both circuit and transformers a second level approach so that you are getting flagship level transformers, flagship level circuit, flagship level wiring, flagship level execution, but not having to pay for flagship level casework perhaps. And so by saving a little bit on the casework, you're not having to pay for that statement level, but still getting the performance. So you're getting a 60-watt amplifier that can run anything from a 6L6 all the way up to a KT120 if you really wanted it to, with the lowest distortion, nearly impossible to make this amp compress. It's very, very difficult to make this amp clip. It's a fatigue-free amplifier. So if you want an amplifier that's going to give you harmonic composition, enough romance to really feel a classic sound, but still have the detail that you'd expect from a reference amplifier, this is really going to give you that without feeling like you have to spend into that excessive tier and worry about, did you overspend and where are the diminishing returns? Our transformers are where we invest the greatest sum of our energies, and these are truly, truly exceptional examples of our transformers. We're very, very, very proud of these, and they do wonderfully good things. These, we were taking them down into the single digits, about 8 hertz, greater than 20 watts down to 8 hertz, and putting square waves through them, and they weren't talking. So their ability to reject, square waves and remain stable is really quite impressive, as well as their high frequency extension is just absolutely remarkable. So this is a very classic circuit, well-known circuit that has served us really, really well. And we've juiced up the power transformer. This power transformer is actually a little hotter than it used to be. And so, yes, you can run hotter tubes on it if you wanted to. We don't. We don't necessarily encourage people to do it. It's not what makes us happy or brings us joy. It's not the Maria Kondo that we want. So we dialed the bias down on these because we're already running enough current through the tube, but we don't want to burn up the little tiny KT88s because we're running enough current. So instead of running them at 55 mils, we've dialed them down to 50 mils because we're running enough current through them. You will never see this amp compress. And at 60 watts, it's going to behave like a 75 watt amplifier. With our reference amplifiers, for which this is in the entry to the reference amplifiers, we are looking at resolution in equal measure to harmonic texture. So, the power supply is fully bypassed. It has bypass caps to lower, and the power supply is very, very low impedance. So, low resistance, low impedance. We're looking for things, those kinds of efficiencies. I have never been one to believe in power being the greatest tell of an amplifier, but bandwidth and noise. Those are my greater attributes. And I think that people like raucous speakers, and I don't discount that. But in practical terms, I have not seen in a 400 square foot room with a 92 dB efficient speaker, I was not able to compress the amp. I was able to compress the room, compress the speaker. The amp didn't give up. The room did, which always gives up first, and the speaker gave up second. I always think the room gives up first. So if I'm being realistic, I always tell people, like, your room's going to lose first, your speaker loses second, your amp typically loses third. And thank God for a tube amp. If it loses, it won't hurt your speaker. But I also want to think about, what does that first watt and what does that first 10 watts look like? What is the level of distortion, and what's the level of frequency extremes that first 10 watts can look like? This amp will give you very low distortion up to 60 watts and moderately low distortion up to 75. And I plan to bring something that will give you astonishingly low distortion from 75 watts and really low distortion to about 105. Or whatever 8 amps will light up. I am a fan of big brush romantic speakers. I have some 604s, I have some JBLs. I recognize, though, that is not the total sum of all speakers or all choices. I am an equal fan, though I don't own at this exact moment, of high precision, high resolution speakers. And those require a different amplifier. Those do not require an amplifier that is centered in its mid-range texture and body, but it requires an amplifier of speed, precision, depth, and bandwidth. And push-pull designs are those. And, I've said it for headphones. You need a bigger gun, I'll give it to you. And, you need only half a watt, but you want 10. I've given people 15 for a headphone amp. Careful what you plug in. And in Expo, we're hoping to surprise people with push-pull 150s in very big iron. Showed up.